Happy Sunday, everybody. Welcome in to the Point. Hope you're all doing well. It's a not so beautiful day, but happy to be here with all of you on this Sunday. And we got a lot to get into today. A lot to get into today with the Final Fours from the past couple days. I want to talk about the Pittsburgh Penguins, who have been surging as of late. Watched their entire game yesterday. They're playing with heart, with passion, and it's something to behold, really. And I can't wait to break it down with all of you today. Also, we'll talk about some things in Major League Baseball that have to be concerning for the sport, with injuries to pitchers, and then you have to weigh what are you going to do when it comes to you know pitch clock and keeping the game viable and keeping the game interesting. So they got some difficult decisions to make. Tony Clark, the leader of the Players Association, is pissed. He's making statements on Twitter. So they got a bit of a mess on their hands, which we will get into today. But I want to start with the Final Four, with the women, because we got the national championship game this afternoon at 4 o'clock local. And they always do that. 4 o'clock in the afternoon on a Sunday. It's not horrible. I don't think it's optimal for the game, but I will say this. I talked the other night about the game between the women, the Iowa and UConn game. And it started here in New Brunswick at about 10:30. It was like 10:40. And of course, I watched the whole game. And I didn't think the ratings would be as good. Crazy thing, it did 14 million people. It had better viewership than the LSU Iowa game in the Elite Eight, which kudos. But it went 14 million watched Iowa UConn. Only 7 million watched the curtain jerker, if you will, South Carolina and NC State, which wasn't a very good game, to be fair. But it didn't matter the time, and that's great for women's sports, that it doesn't matter what time of day it is. People are going to find it on their TV. They're going to put it on ABC, the mothership, ESPN. They're going to put the game on. I thought it was fantastic theater. I thought at times that I never thought Iowa was going to lose the game. But I give credit to UConn for staying in it as long as they did. They were down 8 with like 3 minutes left. They fought back to get within a point. And I'm going, wow, these girls are not giving up. They have a short bench. Paige Beckers, her shot wasn't going early, but she's making passes, going into the paint, finding ways to score points. And then we get to the last 10 seconds. And UConn gets called for an offensive foul. I thought it was a horrible call. I don't think it was a foul. I don't think you can make that call at that point. It leads to free throws on the other end because UConn was in the bonus. So Iowa just makes their free throws, game's over. And it just sucked the life out of it. LeBron tweeted, no, Gabriel Union was tweeting about this, celebrities, and in real time. We're like, that can't be called. That's not the right thing to do. Kind of ruined the game. I agree. The refs, you never want to be part of the story, and they did. They became part of the story. They became part of the narrative of the game. Do I think Iowa's a better team than UConn? I do. But UConn deserved a chance to put up 2, tie the game at 71, and then Bob's your uncle. Who knows how this is going to go? They had played fantastic defense. Caitlin Clark did not have a good game. You can look up a box score and go, Caitlin Clark played really well. I don't think she did. She didn't shoot well. I mean, UConn was smothering Iowa. That first half defense was superb. 10 steals by UConn in the first half. Paige Beckers, Caitlin Clark, both phenomenal players to watch. I always say this. Give me a reason to watch something. I don't go out of my way to only watch NHL or only watch NFL because that's what I love. If there's a spectacle that makes me want to watch it, I'm going to go out of my way. And I think that's something that women's sports has been lacking forever. Why should I watch this other than the fact that I feel like I have to support female athletics? And that marketing strategy is a losing strategy to me because if you meet anybody in life and the only thing that they have of value to offer to you is sympathy or pity, I don't want to be around them because they're a pain in the ass. They're not a good person to be around. It's just a loser's race, to quote the great Pat Quinn. I wanted to watch these games. I was texting in real time with my mother during the games because it was a spectacle, because it was great theater. You had personalities. You had a reason to tune in. And that was the difference. That's what this tournament. We know the names. We know the personalities. I hope the PWHL is supremely, superbly successful. But I'm going to be honest, I haven't watched one game yet. I think I was at a pub once. It was on one of the TVs, and I watched it for 5 minutes. But I haven't watched a complete game. I haven't watched a period of a game. Because I don't know why I should. Sidney Crosby, I watched yesterday. And I'm going to talk about Pittsburgh later. But that game had feel, it had passion. You felt it, that it was important. In Sidney Crosby, yes, his personality is as moon mist as they come, but his game draws you in. Caitlin Clark has that ability. So does Paige Beckers. South Carolina, who Iowa will play today, is different. Camila Cardozo is a really good player. Center, good in the paint, doesn't have much of an outside shot, but she's a cog in the machine. South Carolina has lost 3 games in 3 years. Dawn Staley, the head coach, has built a program. While I think Iowa and UConn are built on an individual talent who makes the players around them better. Iowa is much closer to LeBron's early Cavaliers teams than they are him with the big 3 in Miami. Doesn't make it any less captivating, doesn't make it any less interesting. But that's just how I view it. If it was South Carolina, NC State in the final, is it as compelling? I don't think so. I don't think viewership would be as high. It would do well because you want to finish the tournament. You want to see who wins. You want to say you watched the game. But I think what women's sports, what college women's athletics, and athletics as a whole, what you have to want is for people to watch this sport and go, okay, Caitlin Clark, who's going to the WNBA, and the draft is, I think it's either April or early May. It's not, the season starts like less than 3 weeks after she's done playing college basketball. She doesn't get much of a break. So I think you have to hope is, number one, that they follow Caitlin to the WNBA, and they follow Angel Reese, who declared this week, and they follow the great talents that are going to go. Aaliyah Edwards, who plays at UConn. Excuse me. And also, what you have to hope is that next year, when Paige Beckers is still in college, we have to go, okay, I remember how good the product was last year. I remember watching it and going, wow, that basketball is pretty good. People will come back and say, you know what? Let's watch it some more, even though Caitlin's playing for Indiana, whatever, in the WNBA. I don't know their name. Don't know their last name. Because the product was that good. The theater was that good. You got to hope that more and more people are filling out brackets, not just for the men, but for the women. That's a marketing strategy that needs to be utilized more. Let's fill out some brackets, get people interested, gambling, whatever it has to be, to continue to draw interest, to continue to get people excited to consume the product. So I think this has been a phenomenal couple weeks for female athletics. I think it's been a great couple weeks for Iowa, for them to get back to the national championship game. I'm looking at it here. They beat South Carolina to advance last year. They beat them in the Final Four. And now South Carolina has the opportunity to do what Iowa did to LSU. I'm on FanDuel here. You go to NCAA basketball. Iowa is plus 6.5. If you've been following me for the Final Four, you would have made some money because I hit every one of those spreads. South Carolina's the better team. Caitlin Clark's the best individual player in the game. South Carolina impressed me against NC State because they just smothered them in the second half. They were only up one, but then they just dominated the paint. Great ball movement. Aggressive, pushing the pace, and they made it happen. If Caitlin shoots the way she did through 3 quarters against South Carolina today, they're not going to win, and they're likely going to be steamrolled because South Carolina is the better team with more overall talent. And that's why I'm taking South Carolina minus 6.5, the favorite. We're going to talk about the men, but I think the 2 best teams going into the tournament are going to be the 2 best teams that win it all. Because that's just the way it works. This year, anyway. I just look at it that way. To me, South Carolina has more size, not going to be hard to deal with in the paint. Iowa's going to be forced to foul. Great end to the tournament. Hopefully it does great ratings this afternoon, but I got South Carolina beating Iowa and taking home the national championship and finishing an undefeated season. To the men's side of things, Purdue versus UConn. Number 1 versus number 1. Could argue the 2 most consistent teams in basketball this year. UConn, who really doesn't have a face of the program. Their face of the program is their coach, Dan Hurley, who's always active on the sidelines. Then you have Purdue, who has 7'4" Zach Edey, who has been, wrecking people along the way. Purdue crushed NC State last night, and if you didn't watch the game and just look at the box score, you might go, okay, well, Purdue really played well. I don't think they did at all. And if Purdue plays the way they did yesterday against UConn, they're going to lose badly. Because UConn's better. Purdue turned the ball over. They made stupid mistakes. NC State was just awful in the second half. DJ Burns could not deal with Zach Edey. DJ Burns is a non-factor in the game. He had to chase Edey around, and it was just a bad matchup. NC State lost O'Connell with their senior, who was a big loss. DJ Horn had a really good first half to keep them in it, but you just saw that Purdue had too much. UConn had a tougher game against Alabama. I said if Alabama can shoot well from 3, they have a chance. And for the most part, they did. If you look at stats for the game, Strada 3 for 5, Griffin 2 for 5, Reitzel 2 for 3. Stevenson didn't attempt one after making 5 the previous game. Sears 3 for 6. When you look at that, they made 9 3-pointers. They shot pretty well. But UConn in the second half, with the ball movement pick and rolls to Klingon, Caravan being completely relentless on the offensive boards, Newton finally finding his shot after Castle really carried them in the first half. Eventually, Alabama just didn't have enough answers. You stopped making shots. UConn, okay, settling for a 2-pointer, getting it to the paint, dominating, which I knew they would. They just had too much. Great season for the Crimson Tide and head coach Nate Oates. But now you get Purdue, who hasn't won in a really long time, and Zach Edey, who will be playing his final college game before going to the NBA. And you have, Klingon and UConn, who are just a huge team, hard to deal with. Klingon versus Edey will be fun because it's finally a size matchup that Klingon can, Edey will have to deal with, honestly, to see if he can get around him. 10-20 tip-off. Not thrilled about that. Oddly enough, it's the same line as the women's final today. It's UConn minus 6.5. I didn't think Purdue would get this far. I thought they'd stumble because they always do. Every year they find a way to lose. But they really haven't been involved in that. I mean, that Tennessee game, if they pulled away late, that's been their toughest competition. They had the much easier the opponents yesterday. They got rid of NC State easily, playing an 11 seed. I have UConn winning the game and going back-to-back national championships, which would be something else. But I do think we get a close final. The thing for me is UConn, the first half's like a feeling out process. It's like a fight. The first round you go in, you might not look all that great. You might even give up the round because you're just you're playing chess. You're moving a couple pawns around. You're seeing how your opponent is reacting to your moves. And in the second half, you come out with your counterpunch and you knock his block off. And that's what I think will happen here. Purdue might even lead at the end of the first half. Edey will have 16 and 10 in the first half. Looking really good, but then they make the adjustments. And their 3-point shots start to fall. As good as the Purdue guards are, I think UConn's are better. And I'm still going to take UConn minus the 6.5 because I think it's close. It'll be within 10. But UConn makes their free throws late in the game. They can smother you. They have that championship pedigree. And Dan Hurley will have that team ready to play. Without question. So I got UConn and South Carolina winning the national championships. But I'll be watching both games, one this afternoon, one tomorrow night. This is really a great, appetizer. You get this, then you go into Masters Week, which is technically Masters Week right now because it's Sunday. The Masters will wrap up a week from today. Ongoing is the Valero Texas Open. The winner does get to go to Augusta, which is a big deal. But this tournament's really been a nothing burger. Akshay Bhatia he's leading by 4 strokes, should win the tournament unless he completely collapses today, but it's kind of gone under the radar. Nobody cares about the Masters. All the best players in the world will reunite. We'll talk about that later, and we will talk about the odds, everything that goes into it. But can't wait for the basketball today. Let's go to hockey. Heart. How do you measure heart? Well, Sidney Crosby has heart. He's got pride. And he played with it yesterday. He came out with a purpose. That whole team came out with a purpose. And the Pittsburgh Penguins found a way to get the 2 points against Tampa Bay Lightning. And with that result and the rest of the results from over the weekend, which were not good for many other teams, the Pittsburgh Penguins now currently sit in the final wildcard spot in the Eastern Conference. I didn't give them a shot in hell of doing this after you trade Jake Gensel, kind of offload your team, and you signal to the world that we want to rebuild. Crosby, Malkin, Letang, Nedeljkovic, who's become their number 1 goaltender after being in the American League last year, have driven them. Players stepping up in big moments like Drew O'Connor. Apologize for the delay. Just watched Canada lose to Sweden at the World Curling Championships in Switzerland. But Pittsburgh has those guys that won't quit, that won't give up. Mike Sullivan, who's a Stanley Cup winning head coach. And they found a way. They found a way to compete. They find a way in those games. They gave up a lead late with Kucherov getting another 3 points, and they're back. But then Michael Bunting, who they get in the Carolina trade, scores the game winner, and they get the 2 points. We look at the rest over the weekend. Flyers lose twice. Flyers lose on Friday night to, remember this, feels like Friday was only a couple days ago, which it was, but I forget things. Losing to Buffalo, 4-2. Then they go into back-to-back, and they get absolutely crushed against Columbus. And Columbus set a new franchise record with 6 defensemen scoring goals last night in a 6-2 win. So Philly completely collapses. They've lost all their mojo. They look lost as a team. And while it's better for them in the long run, I'm sure they're not happy about it right now. Capitals, 2-goal lead against Carolina. Ovechkin scores .850 and .851, gets to 29 goals on the season. Carolina scores 4 straight. Carolina wins that game 4-2. And then the Wings have a lead, playing the Rangers, a tough opponent, but they end up losing the game in regulation. They do not find a way to get a point. So all those results, and then Pittsburgh wins, gets the 2 points at home against the Tampa Bay Lightning. And it's really something. I've said this from the beginning. The Eastern Conference is not a strong conference. There's not that many good teams, which there isn't. But Pittsburgh has gotten hot at the right time. These other teams have completely collapsed on themselves. And they're taking advantage of their circumstance. They're playing the hand that was dealt. And now they're in the final wildcard spot while the Islanders are third in the Metropolitan, because the Islanders are the only team that won. Semyon Varlamov, really the backup goalie, but Patrick Waugh comes in, says, screw you to Sorokin, who's been bad for a while. Goes, we're going with Varlamov. He's a better goaltender right now. Varlamov gets a shutout last night against the Predators. And that's a game I watched because I wasn't watching Leafs Canadiens. If you're looking for that update, yeah, save it for Monday somewhere else. I didn't watch it because I didn't care. Varlamov made 41 saves. Awesome. Big moments. And it was 2-0 with an empty netter. So they had to play tight the entire way. Great game, great hockey. But Varlamov was fantastic. Dobson scores the game-winning goal for the New York Islanders. Palmieri, which was 26th with the empty netter. They now have 85 points. They're in a playoff spot. So are the Penguins. So where does it go from here? That's the question. Well, talked about schedules, and that's a hard thing to do because right now I don't think you could pick the Flyers to win any game because they can't beat it. I mean, they lost to Columbus, one of the worst teams in the league last night, 6-2. But you got Detroit hosting Buffalo this afternoon. Game starts in about an hour. And while Buffalo's will play their 78th game of the season today, the crazy thing is if they win in regulation, it's unlikely, but they're not out of it. They win today, they'll have 81 points. 81 points, which will be behind Detroit and behind Washington and behind Philly and behind Pittsburgh. But the Wings can't win. If they beat the Wings today, they'll beat them straight up. Washington's struggling. Washington's in action tonight in Ottawa. And they do have a game in hand on Pittsburgh. You have Philly, who only has 4 games left on the season. And Philly, as I mentioned, completely out of it. They're in Montreal on Tuesday. They're at the Rangers on Thursday, in New Jersey, and then they finish against the Washington Capitals. No gimmies. And again, they only have 4 games left. Pittsburgh has 5 games remaining. Pittsburgh in Toronto, hosting Detroit, hosting the Bruins, hosting the Predators, and they finish up at the New York Islanders, which could be for all the marbles. I think Pittsburgh's gotten hot. They're playing more motivated than these other teams. They're playing like they want it more, like it means something. Because, again, Crosby hasn't made the playoffs in 2 years. There's always talk of, he should ask out, should want to move on, which he should, but he probably won't. And, you know, what happens? But for this year, if you get into the playoffs, you're the final wildcard spot, you play the Rangers, you take your chances. They played the Rangers a couple years ago. They played a really incredible 7-game series that ended with the Rangers winning Game 7 in overtime. I think the Rangers will finish first in the East, despite the fact that the Bruins are only 1 point back, and they played one. Bruins have 4 games left. The Rangers have 5. But it's something else to think the Islanders make that coaching change. They might get to the playoffs. They might play the Hurricanes, who they played last year in the first round. Still a lot to be decided over the weekend. Toronto clinched the playoff spot with those teams losing on Friday night. Tampa clinched the playoff spot as well. But a big race down at the bottom. Bruins beat Florida yesterday in overtime, so they get the 2 points. They're now 5 points up. Both teams only with 4 games left. So I mean, that pretty much locks in that the Bruins are going to win the Atlantic Division. That means they'll likely play the Tampa Bay Lightning in the first round, which I don't know. I don't know if I want that. I'd rather play anybody. I'd rather play, Toronto than Tampa maybe. You could make that argument. We'll see. It's anarchy. Week and a half to go. Some teams with 4 games left, some teams with 5 games left to try to decide things. Matthews chasing 70 goals. He's got 64 with 6 games left. Which, obviously would be a hell of an accomplishment. Ovechkin could hit 30 goals this week after his start would be something. 851, so 894 is the mark for him to get to Wayne Gretzky. Every goal counts at getting closer to that achievement. Rangers, Bruins, Dallas, less likely, but you never know. Chasing the President's Trophy. You have Dallas, Colorado tonight. And I watched Colorado and the Oilers on Friday. The Oilers won twice this weekend, which is great, and they're only 3 points back of Vancouver with a game in hand. You never know. It's Vancouver. They need Demko back in a big way. But I watch Edmonton, and I should love them, but I don't. And earlier in the year, they're playing great defensive hockey, and they were playing that style, and they almost won 17 games in a row. And that was all great. But I look up and I'm watching them play the Avs, and it was a physical game, and Mikko Rantanen left the game with an injury, and it sounds like he might not play again until the playoffs. I think if the Oilers are going to win, they need to play run and gun, and they need to play that reckless style. I truly do. Because I don't think they can play defense all that well. Their defense core is not elite. Evan Bouchard is a weakness. He's a huge man that is afraid to go into the corners, which I don't understand. And I just look at him and go, okay. And you look at CC, and it's just a defense that I don't completely trust. It's a team I don't completely trust defensively. But they win. I mean, they beat Colorado, then they go on the road. They beat Calgary last night. They have 6 games left. Golden Knights, Coyotes, Canucks, huge game. Sharks, Coyotes, Avalanche. I don't know how many of those games they lose. Could they finish the season 6-0? Absolutely. But to me, their style has to be run and gun, up-tempo, chance for chance, because I don't trust their D. I don't trust their goaltending enough to get them all the way there. And that goes against, principles of playing good defensive hockey, trusting your systems, all these different things that you might hear. I'd say fuck your systems. Because I don't trust Skinner. I don't trust that defense core. Evander Kane is so perplexing as a player because he's really interesting and he is a good player and he has value, but then he's a pain in the ass at the same time to the opponent, but also to the team because he's a fucking headache, so you don't know what you're going to get. And of course, this won't be the approach because the coach's not going to, we're going to play run and gun, chance for chance, see what happens. But to me, if they're going to win, that's going to have to be how they play. Because you have the best player in the world, you have a top 5 player in the world next to him in Leon Draisaitl, who had his 5th 40-goal season with the Oilers last night, which I think is now tied for 3rd in franchise history. And you got a bunch of guys who are good, don't get me wrong, but make a lot of mistakes. And a goaltender who's good, not great. And the one thing that the Oilers have, playing run and gun the way I think they have to, over the opposition. The Oilers' power play has been good all year and it hasn't really dipped. Big picture NHL right now, the power plays across the league suck. The Leafs power play, garbage. Garbage. They have so much talent and I don't even know what their plan is. Their power play is awful. If you think the Maple Leafs, you might look it up, might say 8th or 9th, whatever it is. Their power play sucks. right now. Florida, 5th in the league. They're 2 for the last 24 on the power play. Sucks. Bruins, 2 for the last 22. Garbage. All these power plays going into the playoffs stink. The Oilers had that advantage. Vegas, who's going to be on their power play? They're all fucking hurt. They don't know. LA had some good results on the power play last night. Kudos to them as they get hot late in the year. But I would just shoot the puck, create chaos on the power play. The Oilers can move the puck around. Tampa, good power play. Always, again, another team where that's an advantage. Because you have an ace in the hole. You have Kucherov on your power play. Why I think sometimes the Leafs power play is not that creative and it isn't all that good is because Matthews is not a great facilitator compared to Kucherov and compared to McDavid. Can he rip the puck? Yeah. And can Kucherov rip the puck when he wants to? Absolutely. But he's also can pass a no-looker across the ice, take the tape to Braden Point, and he can put it in the back of the net. As easy as he can shoot the puck. Plus you have Hedman, who has a much better shot than Morgan Riley, which is not debatable. But some teams just got to put it together because you know you're going to the playoffs. Play these last four or 5 games. Figure out what you want to do. Figure out what's going to work. I look at so many teams like Arizona, San Jose. They don't care. Nashville, they know they're going to the playoffs. They know they're going to be a wild card team at this point. I give credit to the Winnipeg Jets. Kind of hit the ditch. Then they go into this week and they win 3 games. And now they're only 2 points back of the Avalanche with 5 games to play. They still could get home ice. They still technically could get first in the Central. Won't happen, but they could. Beats Minnesota yesterday, which isn't an easy game in my mind. Minnesota still playing for something. Get by them. They get at the Predators on Tuesday, at Dallas this week, at Colorado. That's a tough week. But you look at their April, beat LA, beat Calgary, beat Minnesota. 3 wins in a row. Get it back on the tracks a little bit. Better feeling throughout the locker room. Colorado's got some injuries. Some players not feeling the best. Some bad mojo going on. The Art Ross race. Kucherov's got a 5-point lead on McKinnon. 6-point lead on McDavid. 136 points on the season. 93 assists, so he technically could still get to 100. I wouldn't rule it out. McDavid sitting at 99 after getting 2 last night. Matthews with 64 goals. I mentioned Reinhart with 53. McKinnon with 48, trying to get to 50. Pasternak with 47 with 4 games to play. I don't know how they're going to go with the Hart Trophy. I don't know who the nominees are going to be. It's a fascinating year for that. If Matthews scores 65 plus, which he will, my 3 nominees would be in this order. McKinnon, Kucherov, Matthews. McDavid would not be in the top 3. Despite the fact that he'll probably get 140 points, and despite the fact that he's going to get 100 assists, and only 4 guys have ever done it ever, and despite the fact that the Oilers might win the Pacific Division after being in dead last in the NHL in November. That's a pretty good case, too. Despite all of that, Throwing that out the door, much to my hypocrisy, I would go with McKinnon, Kucherov, and Matthews for these reasons. McKinnon's argument for winning it is not, oh, he's never won it before and Taylor Hall got it when he should have, which is true. But that's not how I vote. I vote on just who I think's the best. From Jump Street until Game 82, I think Nathan McKinnon's been the best player in the league. He's had the most consistent of those teams. And he's been a man on a mission, clearing the way. And think about what he's had to overcome. Valeri Nichushkin, who's a phenomenal player when he's on the ice. Big man, physical, can score. He's going to score 30 goals this year, despite the fact that he was in the player assistance program twice in the last 8 months. He missed him for chunks of the season. Who plays with him on his wing, not around because he's having a drug issue or alcohol, I don't know. But he's in the player assistance program dealing with some kind of something. So he's not available to Nathan McKinnon. Also this year, Nathan McKinnon lost Sammy Girard. Yes, he's a defenseman, but he's on his team and he's important because he went into the player assistance program. And this is a touchy subject, of course, because players need help or whatever it is. Alcoholism and this and that, it's becoming more and more regular. You can make the argument that's a good thing or that's a bad thing. I've made this argument before. You could be dealing with a mental problem, but you still have to go to work every day of the week. You might be seeing a shrink. Doesn't mean you can't go to work the 5 days a week. But I digress. Let's not make a right-left argument here and create chaos, but that's just a feeling. But he's had to overcome that. Also, Gabriel Landeskog, his captain, one of the best players in Colorado, hasn't played a game all year. Knee surgery, a real knee surgery, may never play again, Gabriel Landeskog. So he hasn't had him at his disposal. And yet he's at 131 points, and he's had 48 goals, and he'll get 50 this year. He went 35 straight games while at least getting 1 point on home ice. Second longest streak in NHL history behind the great one, Wayne Gretzky. That's a pretty good list of accolades. That's pretty impressive. And his team may end up finishing first in the Central Division. So that's my argument for McKinnon 1, even if he doesn't finish first in points. To me, it's already locked in. There's a week and a half left. No 4 games will define this. Nikita Kucherov would be on my list no matter what, and I don't understand how he's not. I hear this argument. He's so bad defensively. Okay? He's bad defensively. Is McDavid a great defensive player? Does he give it all in the back check? Is he a 200-foot player? No. But Kucherov's lazy. He looks like he's not trying out there. Oh, I love that one. That's so rich. You ever watch Lionel Messi play soccer? The guy doesn't fucking move when the ball is not around him. The ball comes near him, he makes something happen. He's regarded as the best soccer player to ever do the damn thing. And I'm not even a fucking soccer guy, but I've seen it before and I know how he plays. That argument is so lazy, it's so stupid, it's so uninformed. Nikita Kucherov's the best power play performer in the league. He's already won a Hart Trophy. He's a 2-time Stanley Cup champion, and he's waltzing, if he wants to, with a can of Bud Light into the Hockey Hall of Fame, whether you like it or you don't. This season, he's on a team that isn't very good. Playing in a conference that isn't very good, to be fair. But you look around. Where's Ryan McDonough? Oh, yeah, he's in Nashville. Be nice to have him. Where's Mikhail Sergachev? Oh, yeah, he broke his leg. Oh, he's not available to me. Vasilevsky, where did he play the first 2.5 months? He had hip surgery. Phew, that's tough. Stamkos, I got a contract dispute. I'm not real happy with the Lightning. I'm sure that's easy for him to deal with. Thank God I have Braden Point. Thank God I have him here. Where's all these guys? Where's all these good players? Oh, we had to get rid of them because we won. Because Kucherov was the driving force behind them winning multiple championships, 3 straight finals in a row. He might make the game look easy, but that's just more of a compliment to him. of how good he is. So dynamic with the puck, great passer, great finishing ability. If you don't think he's a tough player, he's greasy in the corners. He'll get in with you. He'll make it tough on you. Nikita Kucherov is in over Matthews and he's over McDavid. And to me, McKinnon and Kucherov are locked in. No doubt. They're going to the playoffs, Tampa Bay. In large part because of him, he has 40 more points than his nearest teammate, which is the third largest margin in the history of the NHL. To think Taylor Hall won it the year that he only had like 25 more points than next closest teammate over McKinnon. Need I say more? Kucherov is dialed in. He's a lock. The third one is up for debate. Matthews, McDavid. Even if Matthews doesn't score 70, I still think he's the third nominee. And here's why. Leafs fans, I'm a hater. You don't like our team. Why are you so mean? Well, stop complaining and hear this. I have him as the third slot because he's doing the thing that's hardest to do in the league, and that's score goals. And he's going to get 100 points. I think he got it last night, which is impressive to me. It wasn't always that, you just score a bunch of goals, you get nominated for the Hart Trophy. It didn't always happen to Ovechkin, so that's a misnomer. But he's been dynamic. Marner's missed time. This season's been weird for the Maple Leafs, and I'm still going to have him nominated, even though the Maple Leafs not winning the Atlantic makes their regular season a big, fat disappointment, and hater I might be. Except I'm not. I'm just honest. But he's going to score 65 plus. 2-time 60-goal scorer in his career. The best goal scorer in the game. Over 100 points. Dynamic. Does it at both ends. I wish he was more physical, but I can't ever have everything. Really the leader of that team, but Tavares wears the captainship, so great. Pajama boy. But Matthews is the best player. Matthews got the big contract. After getting the contract extension, he's going to score 65 plus goals. He is the best player on a team that's going to the playoffs. And I think for majority of the year, he had more of an impact on the Maple Leafs than McDavid did on the Oilers. McDavid hardly scored 30 goals this year from 60 last year. I think you look at it and go, Matthews is a bit better, a little more productive, a little more important to his team than McDavid is. Could go either way, but I'm going to repeat this. To me, it's an absolute shame. An absolute shame. If McDavid and Matthews are nominated and Kucherov is not. And I think it very well could happen. Because where you play does matter. That, to me, that it absolutely does. People that make that argument are wrong. The fact that Kucherov's a Russian does not help him. Which this is happening all over sports, all over the world, and I don't understand it. Okay, I happen to be from... I think being a Canadian is not that great of a thing right now. We have a fucking prime minister who's a fascist, and our whole country is in a pile of shit right now. But you get some clout for playing on a Canadian team. Sure, we're not at war, but we're funding it. So you're welcome, Ukraine. But I mean, these arguments that they do dive into where you're from, what's your political background, or do you lean left, do you lean right, they do have meaning on the final say of these things. But honestly, those are my three. I don't think they'll change. Because no 4 games is going to change my thoughts. Tampa's going to the playoffs. Edmonton's clinched. Toronto's clinched. Colorado's clinched. Winning your division? Okay. Maybe. Maybe that holds some significance. I don't think it holds that much. Might hold some, but not enough to really dramatically shift things. But that's where I see this going. Some important games today. If Detroit wins, they're back in a playoff spot for now. And with that win, Buffalo they'd be knocked out of their chances of making the playoffs. You got Washington playing tonight against Ottawa. Have to find a way to win that game. Ottawa's been a disaster of a team. The last little while they lose to New Jersey last night. Didn't watch it. Tell you what I did watch last night. Multiple screens. I'm watching the basketball games. Watching the Islanders. Watching a little baseball. But on my computer, I threw on WrestleMania. I keep up with wrestling. I don't watch it all the time. Tune in for the big events. Now WrestleMania's 2 nights, Saturday and Sunday. And it was at Lincoln, it was Lincoln Financial Field where the damn Eagles play. So you're drawing in 80,000 people both nights, which is crazy, the kind of business that they're doing. Selling beer for, I'm sure, $20 a pop. But I'll tell you, it was a really fantastic show. The Rock returned at 51 wrestling, taking bumps, winning in the main event, which I thought the main event was a really good match. Sami Zayn beating Gunther. Phenomenal. Best match of the night. Phew. That was some theater. That was great. And a great moment with his wife in the crowd and his son. That was fantastic. Really fun match between those two. You had a ladder match that had a lot going on, which I liked. Female match to open the night that was quite good between Rhea Ripley and Becky Lynch. The Usos match was garbage. But I watched Night 1 WrestleMania. I thought it was really well done. Good product. My guy CM Punk was on commentary before. The best in the world. Glad to see him back doing his thing. Night 2 tonight. I think I'm going to tune it on the computer again and watch some of Night 2 WrestleMania. It was good stuff. Fun, captivating, really impressive athletically what these men and women can do. Good storylines. I was happy with pretty much every winner in the way as a kid, I'd watch wrestling thinking it's real, thinking, oh, this is how it works. Now I go, okay, what's best for the storyline? How do you move this forward? I think they hit it on most of the fights. So kudos to Triple H and all the people running things behind the scenes. But that's the one thing I did last night was watch WrestleMania. I kept an eye on the Blue Jays. They lost 9-8 to the Yankees, although they were down 9-1 at one point. Gosman was a gas can, only going an inning and a third, giving up 6. The team bounced back. They found their bats. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. finally got a hit, which was nice because he was batting 150 on the season. Bichette found his game a little bit. And if Springer didn't approach that final at bat like it was a Little League game, maybe they would have found a way to make something happen. But in the end, they lose to the Yankees. They'll finish the series this afternoon at the Bronx before they return for their home opener tomorrow night against the Tridents Up, the Seattle Mariners. Blue Jays I don't really like watching the Blue Jays, quite frankly. They're a boring team, but I watched some of that game. Watch the D-backs and the Braves. Braves have comebacks back-to-back nights they were down 9-something or 8-something as well to the Diamondbacks last night. They rally, find a way to win. Totally impressive. They just find a way, that team. And they're now at 5-2 on the season. Chris Sale on the mound for the Atlanta Braves today. Early on, you see some surprising teams, like the Detroit Tigers are 6-2. You got the Red Sox who are 6-3. They've been a really good team. The Astros who are 2-7, who are looking to avoid a sweep tonight on Sunday Night Baseball against the defending champion Texas Rangers. Rays are up and down. They're 4-5. They don't look great. You have the Miami Marlins, who are 0-9. Kyle Gibson against Max Meyer this afternoon, but the Marlins are in a tough rut here. And they finish against the Cardinals this afternoon in St. Louis. Then they head to Yankee Stadium for 3. Then head to play the Braves. That's a tough schedule. They need to find a way to get a win today because it'll be the easiest game they have in their schedule coming up. But early on in baseball, there'll be panic, there'll be teams, but you don't want to be 0-10. One major concern for baseball, and this is a legitimate concern, it's something they have to look at. Garrett Cole is out until June. Could be out for the season. Sandy Alcantara, former Cy Young winner, out for the season, Tommy John. Also on the Miami Marlins, Yuri Perez, one of the best young pitchers in baseball, Tommy John. And then announced yesterday, Shane Bieber, the ace for the Cleveland Guardians, needs Tommy John surgery. He's done for the season. Huge blow to the Cleveland Guardians. So that could be 4 pitchers, a number of them aces, who are going to be unavailable to their teams. And what I have to say about this is, what's the problem? What needs to be done to stop this from happening? Because really, it's horrible. Losing these great pitchers, losing the talent on the field. And yes, starting pitchers not as important as it used to be, because you have guys that just, quite frankly, don't pitch that long. You go 4 1/3 innings, you go 5 innings, then comes in the bullpen. So starting pitching isn't that important. But one of the best things Major League Baseball has done in a long time was put in the pitch clock. It sped up the game. It got people interested. And nobody can tell me that the pitch clock has not helped baseball. I'm watching more baseball in the last couple of years than I have in the past 5. They're quicker games. There's more action. There's more intrigue. There's more stolen bases. This, that, and the other. But pitchers say they're moving too quick. It's affecting their elbows. Tony Clark, head of the Players Association, is saying this is horrible for baseball. It's hurting our pitchers. And I don't know if there's enough argument. I don't know if there's enough evidence to either confirm this or deny this at this point. But what I will say is pitchers are going down. And you want to have them available. And they're not. So it hurts your product. There's got to be a solution. There's got to be a reason. There has to be something that can be done here. To me, changing up the pitch clock is not a good thing. If you want to move it for a couple seconds, to move it from 18 to 22 or 18 to 20, sure. but the pitch clock has saved baseball. Avoiding the shift has saved baseball. It's made it interesting again. Going back to what the product was 2 years ago is not a step in the right direction. It's not going to increase, it's not going to make people want to watch the game anymore. And I don't know. I don't know what the solution is. But to me, it's a tough time for this to be happening. Seeing these injuries, see them come up. What I will say, it's early in the season. That does, you can say some of these guys haven't even pitched yet, and they're getting Tommy John. So maybe it isn't the pitch clock. It's just the way they handle their bodies, the way they go about it. It's just not the right way to do things. But I don't know. I hope baseball can figure it out because I think baseball is in a really good spot right now. Going back to what it was, not a good thing. But do I want to see Shane Bieber pitch? Sure. Do I want to see Garrett Cole on the mound? Sure. Sandy Alcantara? Yeah. He made you want to watch the Marlins when nobody cared about the Marlins because they had one of the best pitchers in baseball. Every 5 days, you tune in. Ohtani not being available to pitch this year. Sure, he's interesting. Sure, he's a fascination because he's Shohei Ohtani and he's this unicorn. And he's playing on the Dodgers with Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman in this loaded lineup. But if he was pitching every 5 days, it'd be that much more compelling. Be that much more interesting. You're like, oh my God, they're doing all of this, all of these bats, and you have Shohei Ohtani pitching today? This is crazy. But it's not to be because he's not available. So you have to pivot. You have to deal with it. So there's a lot to be decided. As I mentioned, Masters Week is commencing. Finishing up the Valero Texas Open today. Starts on Thursday. All the big names will be around. Be doing a preview show later in the week talking about the betting favorites, all of that fun stuff. As I go on FanDuel, Scottie Scheffler is the outright favorite to win the tournament, followed by Rory McIlroy, Jon Rahm, Brooks Koepka, Schauffele, Hideki Matsuyama, Jordan Spieth, Joaquin Niemann in the top 10, who's a great player, plus 2,500. Ludwig Aberg, who's fun. But all the LIV guys, all the PGA guys, coming together to face off. Should be compelling. Favorite golf event of the year. Seeing them all play against each other. The meetup, all of that stuff. Looking forward to that down the road here. That's going to be it today. A little shorter than usual, but it's kind of a weird time where you're gearing up for the playoffs. You're gearing up for the NBA playoffs. And we'll talk more NBA as we get closer because there are some interesting races where the Lakers have gotten hot. They're now in the 8th seed. They got the Timberwolves tonight. Timberwolves, OKC, Denver, all fighting for the number 1 seed in the West. NBA season done a week from today. So we'll look at that as well. But we'll be back on Tuesday. We'll react to both national championship games. We'll talk about what's going on in the NHL and the NBA. Start to look ahead to the Masters. So thanks for tuning in today. Thanks for the continued support as always. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. This is To The Point.